Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth,
And I'm Coach Victoria.
and in this video we're going to be talking to you about emotional triggers that push your ex away.
Ooh, this is an important one. Before we get into it, I would recommend you subscribe to the channel. That way you can stay updated with our newest videos.
Make sure you click that little bell.
Ding ding.
So, breakups are so emotionally overwhelming, they're very charging, and they just can give us these bursts of energy over different kinds of feelings, maybe anger, resentment, confusion, anxiety, and it can make us exhausted.
Oh yeah.
So usually the person that has done the breakup has been contemplating it for a while. They'd been unhappy about certain things. Maybe you've been fighting for a while. I mean, I was just doing an email coaching where the couple was planning their wedding and going over some of the wedding things, and they got into a fight, and one of them called off the wedding, right? And it was like a relatively small fight, but people get so charged that those things that had been building up for them come out, and then they want to end it. And once they end it, a lot of times now they're like feeling like, oh, good, I needed to do this. This wasn't working. I wasn't happy. We weren't going to get along.
Right, and in this state, they're typically a lot more sensitive to emotional triggers. So that's why we wanted to share that with you today, just so that you're aware after a breakup some of the things that you might want to be cautious of. And some of these things are very knee-jerk reaction for us, especially if we're more anxious. We might just be inclined to do these things without even thinking and without even realizing how they cause our ex to push away way further. So I just want to be mindful of that.
Yeah, you have to be very careful with every interaction with your ex after a breakup.
Right. The first one is frequent reach outs. And so after a breakup, we might still be going through the 5 stages of grief, one of them being denial, and we might not have it in our heads that this person needs space or has decided to really end the relationship, which means and typically has implications that you don't speak as often as you would have before or about the same kind of things that you would have before.
Yeah.
And so constantly hearing from you can be something that wears them down emotionally too.
Now, we recommend not reaching out at all.
Correct. We talk about no contact all over this channel, but just to make it clear, frequent reach outs, and some could argue reach outs in general can be something that is overwhelming for somebody who's just ended the relationship and they're wanting that space.
Yeah, the more you reach out, the worse it's likely going to get.
And I'll also add to that deep and extended talks about the relationship, which this is very knee-jerk reaction, and I understand where this comes from. It's good to want to have good communication with your partner about things that are going wrong, but you have to realize the breakup conversation is not that kind of a conversation.
Yeah.
It's not a temperature check. It is I'm deciding to end this relationship, and this is a final concrete decision for us. So it's very different. We don't want to start having these long, drawn-out conversations. While I think it's okay to ask for clarity, and many of you are not given that kind of clarity, and I really think that you need that kind of clarity for yourself, forcing it from them isn't always the best thing.
It's usually the worst thing.
It's usually the worst thing. I said it lightly.
Don't do it, because it just makes the situation so much worse so quick. I know you want to talk to them and you don't want to let go, but the more you hold on, the more angry they're going to get at you.
Yeah. And it's hard because part of us wants to understand. We want to have these kind of conversations, and that's why I say it kind of becomes second nature as soon as somebody's ending the relationship. Why? What's going on? How long has this been going on for? And these are perfectly fine questions to ask. I find that the more extended the conversations are, the more it turns into, I'm trying to force you back into this or manipulate you back into this. So just be mindful of that.
That's a big point, that they feel like you're not letting them go. I was just doing an email coaching this morning with somebody who was struggling with this exact same thing. And of course, it blew up right in his face, and quickly the whole thing fell apart. One conversation is all it takes.
Oh, yeah.
The amount of emotional self-control you're going to have when you're re-engaging with your ex may be the most you've ever had to have in your life. Because everything inside of you is going to make you want to fix it, talk about those things, but it makes it worse.
Oh yeah, and it can be even harder if the partner is avoidant.
Oh yeah.
Because they probably have not brought up a lot of things until the breakup. And so, you're met with all of this information and you're just kind of told, hey, here, handle it on your own, and I'm out. So, that's something that's really challenging. So we don't blame you when these kind of behaviors come out. We just try to teach you a better way through this.
You're basically going to have to fight your own biology.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like turning off an alarm clock that's inside your head and you don't know how to do it.
Right.
Like, where is the snooze button? It won't stop going off. Because everything inside you is just reconnect, fix this, repair this, don't let them go. Gotta talk about it. We gotta talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Another big emotional trigger for an ex-partner that pushes them away is third parties or involving family members into the breakup drama.
I made that mistake. I've talked about that.
Yeah.
I did it with the Applebee's girl. I could not help it. It was so difficult because I was so close with her family, her siblings, her brother, her sister, her mom. Our families did a lot of things together and celebrated all the holidays and everything together. And so because I was so blindsided and she was so close with her siblings, I was like, they love me. They're going to want to help me out. And they tried to, but they also didn't want to get involved. But I can tell you, it really made her very, very angry. And not just at me. She got really angry, especially at her mom. And she didn't even talk to her mom for weeks, maybe even longer, because she was so upset at mom interjecting her opinion. So you got to be really careful.
I remember my mom used to send my exes cute little things on Facebook, and I would get mad at her too. I'd be, Mom, why are you sending my ex this Tweety bird that says your Happy Monday on it with like glitter on it? So
yeah, exactly.
I would get really upset. But, this is something that typically angers exes in general because, think about it, they already have to, at some point, explain the breakup to everybody. They're already going to be asked by family members or third parties or whatever it might be about it. And so them having to explain it, but then the other person being involved and having to kind of try to navigate their ended relationship through someone else is a lot of energy, and it can be very infuriating. And it also is that feeling of there's people talking about me behind my back that I don't know about.
Yeah, like you're plotting.
Right.
You're plotting against me to make me do something I don't want to do.
Right.
Stay in this relationship. I don't want to do it, and you guys are all trying to make me stay.
Yeah, and it's not a good feeling,
No.
once you've already made a decision and trying to get others to convince you otherwise. So that's something to also be mindful of, is to not involve others into your breakup drama. Another big thing that can really push exes away is obligations. This can be hard because many of you in relationships, you have obligations together. And that could be, whether that's events that you have lined up together, whether that's business, whether that's kids. And while all these different obligations are very different in how you handle them, the thing you want to remember is to not place guilt on top of those things.
The wedding is the one that comes up the most. Like, we have this wedding 3 months from now. What am I going to do?
Right.
I hear that one a lot.
Right. Or events. I have tickets to this event, or we had, this family holiday that we were supposed to spend together. So these are things that are ties to the relationship. And a lot of times you might be inclined to try to use those things to get them back in the relationship. Well, we have this thing and they're counting on us and we promised them so long ago, and what are we going to do about it? So we don't want to add guilt on top of these things. Of course, it's different when we're talking about having kids together and there's co-parenting. That's a completely different conversation. Here we're saying that it can be emotionally exhausting for an ex to have to think about the practicalities of this obligation that the two of you have.
Yeah. And that dynamic is just not going to create attraction. So don't try and use those things to manipulate.
Right. And I'll say with that too is that concept of you promised. Well, in the relationship, you promised to not do this or do that, or to come to this thing with me. And I'm guilty of this one.
Right?
I've talked about this before, where I've sent almost like a maniac. I screenshot.
Oh yeah, I remember now. The screenshots.
Yes, I screenshotted every promise that my partner at the time had sent me, and I sent it back during the breakup, and I said, "You promised. You have to hold on to these things. I can't believe you would break these promises." Right? And there was no concept of, wow, things have changed since then. Yes, it's not nice for somebody to break a promise, but this isn't like he's being held against his will into this relationship.
Yeah.
And so, these are things that can come up that can put a lot of pressure on your ex, and they might not have the energy for it.
Yeah. Guilt along with that, promises and expectations, and it doesn't create a dynamic of attraction. It's more like, I'm stuck. I have to do this thing. Oh, they're dreading it. They're, in many cases, they're like, oh, this is not something I want to do.
Yeah.
And you don't want anyone around you when they're feeling like that.
Right. And you don't want somebody to feel obligated or forced to be in your presence or do something with you.
Yeah.
It is something that you sense and pick up on, which probably will trigger your anxiety a lot more. So just because they agree to go to whatever it is because you forced it out of them doesn't mean that, okay, yes, they're ready to be in this relationship again. It just means that you successfully managed to guilt them into something, right? And that's not always the case, but it's something that does happen and that we see.
You just got to be careful.
Right. Another big trigger is telling them how they should heal or what they need to do next.
Or how about what their attachment style is?
Yes.
We have a video coming out on that one. It might be out already now that we filmed that a while ago.
Right. And so this is one that comes up quite a bit, and this is more for those of you who like to intellectualize your feelings and intellectualize the breakup, and you might have already been in the process of learning about relationship skills and wanting to fix it and how to handle breakups and whatever it might be before this. So, it kind of puts you in this seat of you're the expert here and, we're going through, and these are the things that we need to do, and these are just the next steps that we need to take to get this to work. Once they've already made a decision, while it's okay to make any kind of request that you would like, telling them how they should proceed or the things that they need to do next typically doesn't go very well.
No, it doesn't.
They're wanting to be independent of you and do their things independently and make choices independently.
Yep.
So being told or directed, or manipulated into making certain decisions typically does not bode well. And with that, I'll also say the flip side. Sometimes we demand our partner to comfort us through a breakup. And while I do think, especially for more long-term relationships, it would be nice to have a breakup end amicably and for things to be ended on a good note. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. But to force your partner to comfort you through the feelings of loss of a breakup, it's something that typically pushes them away, something that they typically don't have a lot of energy for and aren't willing to do. Or patience. Right. And so we have to be realistic with that. Even though ideally it would be great to have a partner who's willing to have these conversations with you and, come to a mutual understanding of some sort. A lot of times it doesn't happen, and trying to force that out of them doesn't happen very well.
Yeah. Most people just don't have enough empathy in them to do it.
Right. And while we can't control all the emotional triggers that our ex is going to have, right? So they might have other things in their life that they're dealing with that are triggers for them, that push them away emotionally, that have nothing to do with you. Maybe they're dealing with family stress. Maybe they're dealing with work stress. Maybe they have other emotional things going on in their life that need attention. We can only control what we can do, right? So we can control whether we add to their stressors, whether we continue to trigger them with our behaviors, or not. And so this is why we decided to share this list with you. Maybe you can go through and think about some things that might have been knee-jerk reactions that might have happened, what the result of those things were. Maybe you can look back to some of your previous relationships, previous breakups, and see how some of these anxious behaviors might have impacted your partner at the time.
Yeah.
It's just some food for thought and for reflection.
And you want to think about these things because if your ex reaches out, you need to make sure you don't make these mistakes, and it's very easy to make these mistakes. I'm telling you, it's very, very easy. Sometimes all it takes is your ex making one or two comments and you spiral.
Yeah.
But the more you work on personal growth, the less likely you are going to be to spiral in those difficult moments.
Right.
You got to learn to self-soothe. You have to learn how to handle the difficulty of all the different emotions, the fears, the anxiety, the pain. And at least when you're in the presence of your ex, to attract them. Because if you do all these other behaviors, unfortunately, it tends to make them feel unattracted to you and like it's not going to work out.
They're going through their own process, and I know a lot of these things, like we had said, can kind of be knee-jerk reactions. We just tend to do them. Sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing them. But we say all of these things to draw the attention to it, to increase your awareness of how you may behave after a breakup and how you deal with these things.
Absolutely. You could do the creative healing course or the workbooks. They will help you. So when you're in those difficult moments, you're a lot more likely to stay centered. Because it's not easy to be in front of your ex again. Because it's almost like your mind goes right into a cloud.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's like a fog has taken over your brain and you can't think clearly. So you want to over-prepare, because once that fog hits, it's not going to be able to make it through. And the stuff you learn could be like the lighthouse to get you through it.
Exactly. And in the moment, it's kind of like we're a little rabbit with a carrot dangling right in front of us, right? There's this relationship that we want so bad to repair, and it's right in front of us. And, we just end up relying on the things that feel right in the moment, on the things that we know to do, that our anxiety might be telling us to do. Well, I got to try and exhaust all our options to make this work. But a lot of times, the more you try to force something, the more it slips away.
Absolutely.
So keep that in mind.
All right, so hopefully this one's been helpful to you. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you can do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Coach Victoria is also available for Skype coaching.
I'm here whenever you'd like to chat.
Just click on her name on the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.